Hey people.
Resident Evil 5 had a lot to live up to when it came out in 2009. It was a sequel to one of the most celebrated and influential games of its decade. It also represented a major turning point in the series too. Resident Evil 4 had dunked its head into the action genre, despite its predecessors being survival horror. Developer Capcom had two options: dry itself off and go back to the original style of gameplay, taking 4 as a fun novelty, or just dive headfirst into the action genre. Which one do you think was more profitable? Resident Evil 5 takes a weird place in gaming history, where everyone suckled at the teat of its predecessor, but didn't quite know where to go from there. Resident Evil 4 kicked off the over-the-shoulder third-person genre that, to this day, still affects the gaming landscape. So Resident Evil 4 influenced games such as Gears of War, which ironically seem to have influenced Resident Evil 5. It's a very early 7th generation kind of game. It has quick-time events, a gruff, brown-haired hero, and a streamlining of its predecessor's gameplay mechanics. Despite that, I think it's aged incredibly well, and even better when modded ever so slightly. The environments look great, the models look fantastic, and the attention to detail is absolutely superb. Though it has improved on the foundations of Resident Evil 4, those foundations were a little shaky to begin with, in particular, the movement. Resident Evil 4 was an action game unlike no other at the time of its release, so people were happy to forgive the tank controls and the stop-to-aim shooting mechanics. Unfortunately, a lot had changed between the release of 4 and 5. The influence of the last game caused a lot of iteration and improvement across the entire industry when it came to third-person shooters. Capcom elected not to learn from the movement controls of the competition, and it remained pretty much the same. You still stop to aim your weapon, and you still pivot in place to turn left or right. The only real difference is now you can strafe side to side. I think this game was judged fairly harshly because of that too. Yes, it was definitely archaic by the time of its release, but the game is actually designed around that. Enemies will slowly approach you when they get close, so that you get plenty of time to act. The controls are clunky for sure, but you get used to it. Resident Evil 5 is a game that might be hard to get for some people. I've seen professional YouTubers get through the whole game, along with 4 and 6, which share similar mechanics, and still not play it the right way. I know it's presumptuous of me to say that there is a right and wrong way, but hear me out. This game is all about crowd control and effective management of your resources. You shouldn't really be shooting a lone enemy to death in this game. A shot to the leg, head or arm will stun most enemies. During the brief moment when they are screaming in agony, you can follow it up with a melee attack. If they are knocked to the ground, you can stomp them to death. You just killed an enemy with one round. But that was just one enemy. What about a group of enemies? These context-sensitive button prompts also give you invulnerability frames, meaning that you're completely safe once you start winding up a haymaker or climbing up a ladder. Melee attacks are one of the best ways to crowd control enemies. Or you can even use the environment to your advantage by leading them to explosive barrels or other hazards. This is the part that I feel people might not get when they play it for the first time. They might get the wrong idea that because you can't move and shoot at the same time, that you should either shoot or run away, which simply isn't the case. You can beat the game by standing in the corner and shooting all enemies until they die. I've seen it done. But you probably won't get the most out of it or have much fun at all playing it that way. Now, I don't think anybody can review this game without bringing up The Thing. You know, The Thing. After the release of its early trailers, which featured certified white male Chris Redfield shooting black villagers in an African setting, Capcom was quickly accused of racism. Fair enough. The trailer had very little context and we do live in a sensitive climate. But in the lead up to its release, they also revealed more footage with a more diverse group of brown people to shoot, and a light-skinned black co-op partner in Sheva Alomar.
They've done it, boys. Racism averted.
And after playing the game and experiencing it for yourself, you'd probably be pleasantly surprised at how well they handled it. I mean, no wonder they didn't include this in the trailers. There are lore explanations as to why they look like this, but yeah. So is Resident Evil 5 and, by extension, Capcom racist? Well, Resident Evil 4 was set in a dark, agrarian, medieval-style French village, literally governed by a Napoleon caricature that they filled with Mexicans and said, there it is, Spain. Jesus, this is just like the jungles of the Soviet Union all over again. Is Capcom racist for bringing the white man to Africa to exterminate the black people? I don't think they're racist. I think they're just dumb, and completely oblivious to the history and iconography of colonialism. They probably just chose the setting because of its striking difference to everything else in the franchise, and at the same time bring back one of the OG characters who happened to be white. Speaking of which, Resident Evil 5 saw the return of Chris Redfield from the original game, now working for an anti-bioterror agency named the BSAA. Chris is an absolute machine. I love him in this game. I think he gets unfairly criticised for being a bland character, even in this game, and a lot of fans were really unhappy with his gains, but to me, Steroid Chris is best Chris. He can be personified by one word: resilience. He is a force of nature, and determined to see things through to the end, despite the amount of sheer punishment he has to go through to get there. Whereas Leon in Resident Evil 4 was a dexterity and charisma build, Chris dumped all his points into strength and constitution. With a straight punch he can explode an enemy's head into little chunks, or stomp their skulls into oblivion. He's joined by brand new character Sheva Alomar, an agent from the BSAA West African Division. Sheva is assigned as Chris's partner due to her familiarity with the cultures and customs. Though we almost never see any of that in play, she does make for an engaging character. She's the voice of reason to Chris's unstoppable force. It's quite a shame that the story focuses primarily on Chris, because I found Sheva to be quite an endearing character too. But I'm also glad that I wasn't forced to play as her, because her screen configuration makes my brain bleed. Their objective is to capture Ricardo Irving, who is planning on selling bioorganic weapons, BOWs, on the black market. During their mission, they discover that Jill Valentine, Chris's former partner, may be involved. From there, they work their way through different environments such as the shantytown, marshlands, an oil rig, ancient abandoned city, and Resident Evil's patented ridiculously large high-tech underground facility. It's a relief that we have two good characters leading the game in Chris and Sheva, because the only other characters are Sacrificial Lamb, Deus Ex Machina, New Jersey Stereotype, Capcom at their best, Capcom at their worst, and the Catman himself, Albert Wesker. The villains are all decently entertaining, but Wesker is on another level. Wesker is the OC you created after watching The Matrix for the first time. He's a super strong, super fast, and super cool trenchcoat wearing badass who can dodge bullets but not fists for some reason. In your first encounter with him, if you're not good enough, he'll just leave the room because he's got better things to do. The man is so cool that he utterly refuses to take off his sunglasses, even if it kills him. So how does the game play with two main characters? Well, playing with another human is by far the best way to play. Instead of the salmon box from RE4, you each have an inventory with 9 slots each to hold weapons and ammo. These weapons and ammo can be traded with each other while standing close by, and you can coordinate roles according to who has what weapons or items.
I need your magnum. Roger.
If you stun an enemy with a shot to the leg or face, your co-op partner can be the one to capitalize with a melee attack if they're close by. Certain enemies can also be comboed to death, which is extremely satisfying to pull off, unless you have friendly fire turned on and accidentally kick your co-op partner in the back of the head. You can also heal and revive each other. Using herbs and first aid sprays will affect both players if they're standing next to each other, which is a fantastic way to encourage teamwork. If your partner is grappled by an enemy, you can rescue them. Boss encounters are designed with 2 players in mind, usually with one player drawing the enemy's attention while the other shoots it in the back. To stop one player from ditching the other and beating the whole mission themselves, there are certain gates, doors, levers that require both players to proceed. The only issues I have with playing as Sheva was the fact that she is left-handed and locked to the right-hand side of the screen, as opposed to the left side as Chris. This was probably done to make split screen a bit easier to read, but there's no way to swap shoulders and it takes a bit of getting used to.
Impress Sheva?
Maybe left-handed players appreciate it, but I wouldn't know. I don't associate with such people. There are also sections where the players are split up, and it's nice to play the sections you didn't get to see the first time round. So what about Sheva as an AI-controlled partner? Well, I don't think she's quite as bad as everybody says, but that kid ain't right. You can give her some basic commands, call her over to pick up things when your inventory is full, and she'll heal and assist you whenever possible. I found it best to just load her up with healing items and use her as a medic. She doesn't just follow you around though. You can set her free and she'll run around the room and collect items for you. She'll give you ammo for the weapons you have, and she's deadly accurate when she actually decides to shoot. So what kinds of enemies does Wesker have in store for you? Well, instead of the Ganados from Resident Evil 4, we now have the Majini. They're more aggressive and numerous than the Ganados, and make use of the improved level design quite well. They'll surround you, approach from different entry points, and keep you in a constant state of danger. There's also several parasitic transformations. When you think you've just about killed them, a large tentacle creature might burrow out from where their head used to be. A flying creature might escape with their spines, or the whole body might just turn into a grotesque Pac-Man. Along with them, we have some mutant spiders, dogs, hyenas, bats, centipede things, giant enemy crabs, hentai antagonists, and various wide boys, to name just a few. In one of the few changes from Resident Evil 4 that I don't actually like, the Merchant is no longer with us. Instead, the Merchant is now an omniscient, ever-present idea who exists within the quantum superposition of in-game and out. Cutting the Merchant from the game does dock quite a lot of personality out of buying, selling, and upgrading weapons. Instead, we have the item management screen, and it functions in almost the exact same way. It can be accessed between chapters, outside of game in the main menu, or even mid-game if you restart your checkpoint. So if you hit a checkpoint and find yourself lugging around a whole bunch of useless gear, you can just reload the checkpoint and dump all your equipment into your stash. Collected treasure is basically just money that hasn't been laundered yet, and that's it. You can't combine different treasures to increase their value like in the last game, but what you can do is upgrade your weapons to a ridiculous degree. What was the highest magazine capacity for the standard handgun in RE4? 25 rounds? Get that out of here! Here you can get a 100 round mag on your starting weapon. You can get through entire chapters without reloading once. Of course, you can also upgrade the firepower and reload speed. I gave my AI controlled Sheva a fully upgraded rifle and watched her decimate all foes within a 3-kilometer radius, when she decided to actually use it, of course. As you may have also noticed, save rooms are gone and have been replaced with standard checkpoints. That's another change that I didn't like very much. Reaching a save room in RE4 provided you with an overwhelming sense of relief when you got there. That and the Merchant made you feel like you were on an uninterrupted journey through each chapter, and it felt less gamey. I'm sure the reason they were removed was so that they could keep the tension high, but I'd still consider it an overall loss. The co-op gameplay pretty much put the final nail in the coffin for puzzles as well. That's not to say this game is non-stop action all the way. It isn't. There are plenty of quiet moments of exploration. For example, the Marshlands chapter gives you a vehicle and several islands to explore in any order and at your own pace. It can actually take quite a decent amount of time before you encounter any enemies at all. And that's not the only time the game slows down. There are plenty of situations where you find yourself just exploring levels unmolested. It's oftentimes wonderfully atmospheric. Not scary though, definitely not scary. But let's be real here, RE4 wasn't scary either. Aside from Ashley's shrill voice, the regenerator section and this bag, nothing scared me there. What's in that bag? To say that RE5 suffers from a lack of scares isn't a valid criticism in my books, because it doesn't attempt to. I'm sure they realised early on that making a co-op game scary, especially one that they probably expected most people to play in split screen, was a nigh impossible task. It knows what it is. It's an action-adventure with a horror aesthetic, and I can respect that. The biggest problem it seems to have is that it was named Resident Evil. The OG RE fans can hate it for not being a slow-paced, fixed-camera survival horror, but what reason does an RE4 fan have? Everything you liked about that game is here. If you can just get past the name, you'll see that this game is mechanically superior in almost every way. And are you really going to stand there with a straight face and tell me that Chris going to town on a boulder is any worse than Mike silently using a helicopter to push a tower onto a group of enemies? Performance-wise, the Steam version runs extremely well, and allows you to play at 60 FPS with higher resolutions than the original console release, but I have a few recommended mods to turn it into an even better experience. First of all, the original release makes you feel like Yoda riding on Chris's back. That can be fixed by pulling back the camera and widening the FOV considerably. Next, this ugly crosshair is on by default if you use a mouse to aim. That can be fixed too, letting you use the laser sight instead. Finally, the lighting improvements that were brought to the PS4 updated release can be implemented here too. And that's all you need. The game will play exactly the same while also being a lot easier on the eyes.
Jesus Christ, these guys are huge.
If you're on PC, I highly recommend using mouse and keyboard to play, but I'd also recommend remapping most of the keys because the default settings are a little weird. I'd also recommend keeping a gamepad plugged in just in case you ever need to enter the Xbox dimension when you feel a QuickTime event coming on. I'd also like to show my appreciation for any game that puts thought into allowing right-click to navigate backwards in menus. This game is brimming with content. The campaign itself is a decent length, but there's a lot of extra content too. Extra costumes to unlock, new weapons to use, and an entire mode dedicated to honing your skills on the battlefield. The Mercenaries drops you into an arena with a pre-made loadout and asks you to score as many points as possible by chaining kills together. I haven't even delved into the DLC. Desperate Escape is just more of the same. but lost in nightmares is Capcom's apology to fans who are expecting something in the vein of the old style of Resident Evil. It's everything they could ask for. It's slow, methodical, atmospheric, and pretty damn tense on your first playthrough. The whole mission is one big throwback to the original. You can even play part of it with a fixed camera perspective. The DLC also comes with extra characters to play as in the Mercenaries mode, including some from the original game. Overall, I'd say the DLC is well worth it for fans of the series. Resident Evil 5 is one of the most polished games I've ever played, and despite the occasional clunkiness, poor writing, and it's one of my favourite games of all time. Forget what you've heard from bitter fans. Try it for yourself. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I really appreciate it. See you next time.